How's it going, guys? So today I'm releasing a two-wheel drive DSG adaption kit for the Alfa Romeo GTV6 engine. So this will be the transverse setup. The blocks are pretty much the same on the 2.5, 3 liter, 3.2. So this kit should work for any one of those. So as usual, we've got our main adapter, we've got the two-piece crank adapter, all your hardware, you got your midshaft, seal nut, lock nut, then we have this bearing carrier bracket. There's a top one and a bottom one, and these two plates will sandwich the original bearing bracket of the GTV6. I'll show you in a sec how that will work. So these two will sit locate snugly inside the original bracket, and it will bolt through the two original holes of the original bracket as well. Okay, so if we take this, that one will come fixed with the bearings in place. So that will be sort of fixed on there. This one will be loose. Okay, so here we have the engine block. As you can see, it's the GTV6. Okay, so this bracket, that's the OEM midshaft bracket, which incorporates the oil filter as well as the actual engine mount bracket is all incorporated all in one. So we had to kind of make use of this bracket somehow. So anyway, the mad scientist was at it again, and we figured a way out. So basically what you want to do is you want to drill these holes out to a 8.5mm hole, those two over there. Okay, you're going to take this sandwich bracket, you're going to drop it on there. It's going to go quite snug on there. Okay, put your two bolts through, which will come with the hardware. Push that two bolts through. For this purpose, you'll have to put two nuts at the back. Pull it up all the way nice and firmly, and then take yourself a 36mm hole saw and bore out. So this is actually your guide plate as well. So then tighten it down and bore this out with a 36mm hole saw all the way through. Cutting fluid, take your time. You want a nice neat cut, and once you have that bored out, I would advise to actually just reinforce this inside of this bracket with some welding, a little welder plate inside there, and just stiffen it up. Because if you look carefully, you've lost quite a bit of material here. That becomes quite thin. So I would advise just to reinforce that back area again, and then it all should be fine. The other preparation on the block is just this area over here. Needs a slight chamfer, probably about 2 millimeters, more or less on the same plane as it originally was, just about 2 mil off there. And then on the lower part of the block, this needs about a 3 to 4 millimeter recess on this edge, and that's to pass the CV cup with a rubber boot on the cup. That's to give it clearance over here. So yeah, just if you need to take off more, then it's easy just to lower the cup and trim some more, and then push the cup back on until you have enough clearance. So that's all the preparation on this block. Fortunately, there's no serious hacking or anything like that. So next up, we'll just assemble the components. So I've got the midshaft, I've got it now assembled. So you got your two sandwich adapters, which basically sandwiches under and over the original bracket. Those two bolts, remember, first drill out those holes about 8.5 to 9 millimeter around there, and then bore your 36mm hole. The lower bracket would have been assembled on the shaft already, so just push it up from the bottom sorry, and then lower this one down, and then before you try and squeeze the plates together, let them sit away from this bracket, away from the bracket. Find the threads with your fingers first. Once you find enough thread with your fingers, then start drawing them together using the bolts. They go in very tight, and there's a reason why. We don't want that bearing to start coming loose. So it does go in fairly tight. And then your original mounting bolts, for now, just don't tighten them down. You want the shaft to have a little bit of give while you lower the gearbox on top of this assembly. So you want the shaft to be able to move around a little bit. So don't tighten those bolts yet. Just turn them in a little bit by hand. And then, so here you can see why we needed to shave that 2mm off there. For the seal nut and the lock nut. Okay, so remember, when you remove the, sorry, I forgot to mention, as with most of the DSG adaption kits, the actual gearbox, the DSG box, needs to be, once again, this protrusion around here needs to be milled flat, as well as that, as well as that. Okay, it's going to be milled 100% flat. And then pick up those points and drill, tap your 10 by 1.5 threads there and there. Okay. This situation happens from time to time. It doesn't need to be done with all DSG swaps, but for this one it will. So that's how you prep your gearbox bell housing. And so when you remove the flange off the DSG, you're going to have a spring which will perch on here. You'll have a spring cup and a brass cone. Those three items have to go back on here. So squeeze that on, turn the nut all the way back for now while you get the gearbox together, and then I'll explain further on once you lower the box on. I'll explain further on. Okay, so the assembly is pretty straightforward. There's a packet that's marked with engine side bolts and other packet marked with the DSG side bolts. So if you don't mix those bolts up, you should be fine. To get this on, it drops on without any issues. Crank adapter, you'll do your first crank adapter with your OEM bolts onto the crank. Just that PCD there. And then you'll bring the two adapters two adapters together with my bolts, and then your dual mass flywheel, which is a 6-hole flywheel, pops on here with the new bolts that come with it, and then so that's everything ready there to get the gearbox on. As you can see, the shaft, I have it pretty loose in here now. And that's for a reason, because we want that shaft to find its home position in the gearbox. And then I think I will also advise rather to not tighten these bolts down. Leave them fairly loose. It will also give you more movement on the shaft. Once the shaft is pushed into once the gearbox is lowered down and the shaft is sitting in the gearbox, and the gearbox has a few bolts in, then at that point you can then tighten these down, completely, and then tighten all your bracket bolts down, and then your shaft will be secure. Okay, so there we got the DSG now assembled onto the block. Please note that this bolt used to be a 12, it's now a 10mm bolt because of the other bolt on the other side that gets very close. So that one is a 10mm. The rest of them will easily go in to all the respective holes. At this point in time, you can, once the gearbox is tightened down onto the adapter, you can now tighten this bracket down onto the block properly, and you can then tighten these two as well. Prior to putting the gearbox on, I want you to tighten these down first and make sure the shaft turns freely and doesn't touch your cut, your big bore, your 36mm bore. Do this before you put the gearbox on. Again, I'll tighten this down, bring the two sandwich adapters plates together, make sure the shaft spins freely. If it doesn't spin freely, it means that you've gone a little bit skew on your cut, and then you're going to have to ream that hole out and just do the whole process over again. Okay, and once you've got it spinning freely, slacken off these two bolts again, slacken off those bolts, and then get your gearbox in. Once the gearbox is home, tighten that up, and the shaft will be secure. And then at this point, you will notice that gap that was needed over there is for the seal nut to turn up. You would have had your spring and your spring cup and your cone all assembled onto this seal nut prior to doing all of this. So at this point, once the gearbox is tightened down, you want to turn the seal nut all the way until you feel the spring just starting to bind. It should happen just as this seal nut enters that oil seal there. It'll start feeling, you'll start feeling the bind as it enters that seal. And then from that point, you need about 8mm of compression on the spring. So then just from that point, you measure, you start turning it clockwise until you've moved it 8mm up, and then you bring your lock nut up and you lock the two together. This will use a C-spanner, 45mm C spanners to operate those seal nuts and lock nuts. Other than that, let me just show you the recess that was needed for the CV cup. So as you can see, if I put this CV cup on here now, it's just going to clear. It's just going to clear in there. Let's just do it from the side. Okay, so I've given it about 2 more clearance. Now once you've got this cup all the way up, you're going to need an extra little bit of clearance on the lower part there, because of the rubber boot that goes over the section over here. So you need a little bit more clearance over there, most likely somewhere in this region over there, but that you can easily figure out once you've got it all assembled. Yeah, so it is easier to do all of this on the bench. I would recommend doing a dry foot like this on a bench. Make sure it all clicks together nicely, and then probably either turn it over or then do it on the ground or on a lift or something. So anyway, that's it, guys. That's the GTV6 2-wheel drive transverse engine DQ250 swap, and hopefully this customer is going to show us what the Alphas can do with the DSG box sooner than later.